Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Superman and Lois Season 3, Episode 8. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, obviously, let's start off with Chrissy writing her piece about Bruno, because it's like, right, Bruno hiding Pia. It might not just be because of her medical condition. He's hiding her because maybe she's like, if stuff about her surfaces to the top, it's going to unveil some of the more nasty stuff that he's done. And it turns out that's exactly the case, because we as the audience know that Pia has been like a mainstay in all of this. She's been like a foundational piece, because they kind of, after taking out Moxie and all those other people, they've kind of been running things. You know, it's been their operation in their show. But Lois is kind of being blinded by her. It's like, yes, I can recognize, like, yes, Bruno did some stuff for his wife, and that's nice and everything, but he's also done terrible things. The only reason why she doesn't want to go after Bruno is because she doesn't want to use Pia as the means to go after him. And it's just like, right, for her, it's like, she's an innocent woman who's also sick. This is also someone that was my friend who's helped me through all this cancer stuff. So she even asked me to look at her husband a different way, that he's not the person I think he is. So all of that's kind of, you know, it is the situation where Lois is letting her own bias get in the way. And it's like, as a journalist, you're supposed to, that's also the thing. You're never going to be able to fully remove your own bias from any story, but you're supposed to. Like, a journalist is supposed to be factual about it, but she's letting, like, her heart get in a way in this regard, because it's like, yeah, you have a job to do, but she doesn't want to do it. And Chrissy really wants to push for it, because, like, this is an important story to tell, especially if it means taking down Bruno, even to the point both Clark and Sam agree about this situation, because it's like, the fact is Bruno's done a lot of terrible stuff that is hidden below the surface. And it's, yes, it sucks that you're having to bring Pia into it. And yes, she's sick. It's a sucky thing. But if this can surface some of the stuff about Bruno, then it's worth it. And so, but Lois didn't initially want anything to do with it until Sam really pushed her to do it, because it is a thing of, are you really going to let your journalistic... Because she already has been second-guessing herself already, because she was like, right, I didn't see what was right in front of me, because she thought like, hey, I'm losing my edge, I'm letting this sickness get the best of me, and I'm losing my journalistic instincts. So I think that on top of this, and now it's like, right, I don't want to throw my friend under the bridge, you know? I mean, because we've known that Lois is able to tackle stories that are even more complicated. I mean, obviously everything with Allie last season, I mean, that was a complicated thing, considering your sister was mixed up in all of that too, but she still wrote what she did. But also her personal feelings got in the way. Like, I'm doubly going to take down Allie because my sister's involved. And so it's just that somewhat conflict of interest a little bit. In this case as well, just because, like, Pia is a friend and she's also been super helpful and supportive for you during this. So I do love that Clark ended up taking Chrissy to Metropolis so they can interview the other lady that was getting chemo with Lois and Pia. And I also love that it's Chrissy's first time, which she's like, oh my God, I'm going to throw up. But, like, if college taught me anything, it's like how to keep my, like, vomit down. I was like, yeah, I love how it doesn't come up that often, but it's like, yeah, I mean, we know that Diggle struggled forever because of Barry's super speed. It would constantly lead to him throwing up. And obviously, Oliver, like, a lot of people have that issue from time to time, but it obviously was a recurring gag with Diggle. But it's like, yeah, it's funny to know, like, oh yeah, flight's no different. If you're not ready for it, it's gonna take its toll on you too. So I think it's funny in that capacity. And they both Clark and Chrissy kind of get shamed a little by that lady from the from Hobbs Bay Hospital or Medical Bay, because she's like, right, because she talks about Pia, like, the fact is Pia actually used to, like, babysit her daughter, and it's like, oh yeah, my daughter was absolutely in love with Pia, she's such a great person. But she says Pia changed in high school. She got very quiet, she kept to herself, and part of me wonders, I can only assume two things. One, that's when she got joined, like, Moxie probably, like, searched her out, and that's probably also around the time her powers developed. So I wonder how did her powers come to be? Like, I mean, it's a metahuman thing, so it could be a multitude of things, but was it like an experiment, or was it just a natural thing in her DNA that led to her having the powers that she had? For Pia, that changed that much, though. I can only assume those two major things ended up happening. I am curious which one happened first. Did she get brought in because of the Hobbs Bay and everything, because of where they, suicide slums and everything, because of where they grew up, it is probably a thing of you probably couldn't escape being in a gang. That was probably the only way to survive. But I'm curious which was joining a gang eventually led to her powers, or did her powers surfacing eventually lead to her getting recruited? Was her powers something that they sought her out, or did she use her powers just because she needed to do whatever she could just to survive? Either way. So all the while that's happening, Lois obviously is diving into the files and everything, and they're bringing up all the stuff that all these murders that it turns out Lex is the one that took the fall for Moxie's murder, which we as the audience know that was Pia, but they haven't pieced that together at that point in time in the story. So while they're piecing that together, obviously you have John Henry dropping off Natalie to her date, and I thought this was going to be like all the parents, but it's like, right, this is between the kids' dates and the her chance to meet the parents. Mateo already met John Henry last episode, so it's the other shoe this time. But I was like, I thought John Henry was going to get invited too, but it's like, no, it's kind of still a date. It's going to be a little while before all the parents meet. I was like, okay, nice way to avoid that. And it's interesting too, because they immediately didn't know that Natalie was John's, which makes sense. I mean, because on this earth, John never had kids. So, and unless she was like, yeah, my name is, does she go by Natalie Irons? Like, that's probably come up before, but I actually don't know I'm sure it's come up before, but like, why would she introduce herself with her last name? It's not that big of a deal. So it's just like, oh yeah, this is Natalie. And the sad thing is, all of them really, really hit it off. It's actually kind of like a dope thing of like, hey, like they're having fun, trying to embarrass Mateo, telling old stories. And I thought was interesting, though, you could tell like it was taking a toll on Pia, because she started talking a little bit and like the table started vibrating. Because her illness is affecting her control of her abilities. I mean, because do we know what type of cancer she has? I wonder, is it a sad backlash byproduct of her power? I wonder, maybe it didn't, because what I was wondering if this is kind of a Quake situation. Now, if you know what I'm talking about, at least I don't know if this is how it worked in the comics, but at least in the show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Daisy, aka Quake, her powers of quaking would backlash and break her arms if she wasn't careful. So eventually they got her gauntlets that could kind of calm down the reverberation, the recoil from her power. So I was wondering if the same thing's happening here, where because of her powers as onomatopoeia, like could it be that kind of like destroyed her voice and took a toll, or could it have, the more use she uses it, the more of a toll it takes on her? Like maybe it kind of worsens her condition. That's what I'm curious about. Almost makes me think of like a Jane Foster situation, or like, right, becoming Thor got rid of all the chemo in her body, so every time she became Thor, it like undid all the chemo she did just for the sake of her, trying to cure her cancer. So I wonder if it's kind of a similar thing of like her power. I mean, the cancer is already sadly progressing and it's pretty bad, but I think her power is probably really aggravated, and we see that a lot later on, how much of a toll. I think I think it might also just be she's in such a, like, her body's in such a frail state from the chemo and the cancer that her power just naturally, maybe if her body was stronger, it could take the recoil from her power, but maybe because it's in such a bad state, her body is, because of her condition, it puts too much strain on her body. That's why later on she passes out. Because obviously Bruno wanted to say like, hey, let's cancel the dinner, but for her it's like, no, I'm not going to let my illness get in the way of my son having so much fun. This is so important to him. And obviously John only knew to go back and check out the Ace Club or whatever because his sister was like, yo, you do know that place is where my brother would stop by all the time with Bruno Mannheim, and he shows up there and sees them all together, and it's like, yo. I guess he never... I guess it's one of those superhero things where, like, because we haven't seen Nat do the superhero thing this season, and I'm sure, John's only suited up in situations like when he had to save his sister a couple episodes back. But I think he probably didn't want to worry her about it. It's like, right, because I don't know if he even really told them about the onomatopoeia attack earlier in the season too. But it's probably a thing of like, I don't want her to worry about all that. Like, I mean, obviously you wouldn't correlate that together because he didn't know Bruno and well, he had to because it's like right because because onomatopoeia was specifically after Lana at the time, so like she just happened to run into John Henry because he was there with Lois, so he wouldn't correlate that even if he knew that onomatopoeia, like he didn't know onomatopoeia for one worked for Bruno Mannheim, and also once again she wasn't there for him, she was there for Lana. But either way, because it was about the money that Dean, that secret account Dean had and stuff like that. But that moment of like your entire world's getting shifted upside down because like it's just like the realization of like, wait, what's going on? Bruno trying to get the kids out of there and the brutality in which he handled that, like showing you who he is. Once again, we got to see this softer side of like, yes, he does this stuff for his wife and, you know, everything. So it's like, yes, there's a little bit of sweetness there. And once again, it is a thing of I do good for Hobbs Bay, for the suicide slums, but it doesn't change the fact is he is a gangster and that is inside of him. Maybe his upbringing created that in him where it's like he had to cut out some of the good in him to be this guy. To make this place better, I had to become the monster, the gangster, the bad guy to do greater good. But it's like, yeah, the brutality of like, you know, your son is dating her, dating, that's her father you're beating up on. Like, why, you know, but in the brutality, he's like, oh, I told you if you showed up again, I'd kill you. It's like, bro, my daughter is here. I found out she was potentially in the same place you were. I had to check it out. I didn't know who your kid was. And, you know, and that's the sad situation. And you can tell by Pia's face, like, she was just kind of like, you don't have to do this. But it's like, if I don't take care of him, he'll keep coming after us. It's like, you know that that's his daughter, but you know that's why he's here. He's not just coming after you to come after you, but for him it's like, well, I had issue. Well, because he also knows, I had to deal with this Earth's John Henry Irons, and so I know who you are. I know how relentless you are, so I have no choice but to put you down. And Pia wasn't going to get involved until the suit showed up, and she like was using her power to fight him off. At the same time, Lois and Clark and Chrissy are piecing it all together about when they look at the wounds of the people that were killed. In that moment, Clark remembers his encounter with Onomatopoeia and the damage she did to a body. So it's like, oh, I know who she is and what she's done, like with that power. So, and it's like, okay, so it matches these wounds. It's like, right, these people are shot, they never found any bullets because of her power. Then it's like, wait, if she's able to manipulate stuff like that, we have to, what about Lex's confession? I was like, the moment they brought that up, I was like, Pia. It's like, they've already showcased that Pia can shift her voice to match people like she did with Lois to bring Clark into a trap. So she pretended to be Lex. I don't even know if they put his name in the credits. I'll talk about it when it comes up, just in case you don't. I'm so curious to see what he looks like in the show, but I did kind of stumble across who's playing Lex in this season because he is going to be in this season. Granted, I don't know in what capacity. It might be in kind of a similar, I mean, especially because there's probably not going to be that many episodes left in this season. I'm sure the season's only 15 like the previous two seasons, but it's like, the fact is that I'm sure it's going to be in a similar capacity like season 4 of John Cryer's like debut as Lex in Supergirl. He was only in like, 3, maybe 4 episodes of season 4 when he first popped up. But like I said, I'll wait to, talk about, like, if you don't want it spoiled who's playing Lex, obviously do not look into it. If you're curious, you can find it yourself. But I want to wait till then and just kind of talk about it because I think that's such an interesting casting because I'm like, I want to see what your Lex is like, especially because we recently got, Titus Welliver, and I'm sure I'm always butchering his last name. Sadly, I only got one episode of him as, I let that slip my mind for a second. We only got one episode of him in the beginning of this season of Titans. But anyway, tangents and all that aside, which that is a whole lane of issues too, where now Lois is like, man, we sent Lex to jail for a crime he didn't commit. Once again, it doesn't mean like, oh man, Lex isn't a terrible person, but it's like, the thing we got him on, I mean, also proves that, I mean, I guess it's like not much his lawyers can do about a literal recorded confession, but still, you know, that's kind of, you think with all the money and power that you have, I mean, everyone kind of wanted to take you down regardless, and this is just going to bolster his situation. Like, now it's like you're going to let one of the biggest bads out of prison because he's been in prison the entire time for these murders that he didn't commit, so. Either way, Clark showed up to back up John Henry, who was going up against Pia, and the fact, once again, it's just like her like throat, like you're seeing like the veins pop and just how much of a strain she's had, and like seeing, because this is our first time seeing her use her powers without the mask on. We've always seen her use her powers as onomatopoeia behind the mask, and never just like what that looks like, and just like how much, dude, she could probably give Black Siren a run for her money. I was about to say, because I was like, let's not forget Dinah's also, but I mean, this is a different Earth, so they don't exist on this Earth. I was about to bring up like Black Siren, Earth 2 Laurel, and then like Dinah as obviously, you know, Earth 1's Black Canary, but it's like they don't exist in this continuity. It's a different Earth, so I forgot about that. Either way, I'm sure Onomatopoeia could give them a run for their money with their abilities. But you can tell that look on Bruno's face, and it is kind of that sad thing of like, in that moment, it does feel like you are utilizing your wife as a weapon. You're really pushing her. But to be fair, it's like, right, you're going to, like, if I don't stop you, you're going to hurt my husband. So we're in this, so I have to do this. So luckily Clark gets there, but he can't really do much either. Because I think there's also the aspect of, I don't want to hurt you because you are, for one, not only are you Lois's friend, let's put that aside. I know you've got cancer and you're sick and you're dying. It makes it pretty hard to go like, I mean, her power is pretty tough for Clark to kind of go toe-to-toe with, but if he pushes himself, he can do something about it, but he didn't want to do anything in that moment because he doesn't want to hurt her or kill her. But luckily, I mean, and unfortunately, it takes too much of a strain on her, so Clark sees that her heart's stopping and she's going to die if he doesn't get her to a hospital, so they put her in a facility to kind of like take care of her, but also lock her up, which Clark feels conflicted about. But for John Henry is like, no, this woman has killed a lot of people. Regardless, yeah, she might be Lois's friend, but she's still a bad person. And it's like, it's a complicated thing of, I think there's a little more kindness in her heart because she was like, she hates what she had done. She's done. She doesn't like, she has many regrets about it. And I think the only reason why she really, I mean, she stays beside Bruno because they've known each other for so long. She knows that he became the monster he did for her sake. He's done the monstrous things he's done also for her sake. But I think she also needs to recognize that this is just who Bruno is. Like, yes, you are kind of an excuse to facilitate some of his own bad behavior of like, this is who he is, that he's going to use you as an excuse to do stuff that maybe he wants to do regardless. Like, yes, there is a little bit of the man that you love in there, but there's a lot of him that's gone. And I think she hasn't really quite come to terms with that. Because obviously she sees the brutality of how he handled the John Henry Irons thing. She's like, you don't have to do this. But he needed to do it. He wanted to do it, you know, more so than anything. So, but also like the anger in John Henry Irons and the way he's handling this, it's like, yeah, he's kind of cruel about it, like the way he's telling Nat, like, you can never go around Mateo, understandably, also giving your phone because I don't want to take the chance you contact him, because Mateo didn't know about his dad, and even then you could see him yelling at his dad, like, I can't believe this is who you are and what you've done, you're a bad guy, like, why would you do that, you know? And that's the thing, like, John Henry Irons has all the reason to want to have smoke with Bruno Mannheim. Once again, not only is he the one that killed this Earth's John Henry Irons, in particular, it was Onomatopoeia who did it for him, you know, Pia in general, and so it's that, then you add in the fact is, he's killed a lot of people. Oh, let's not forget what he did earlier this season, kidnapping and threatening to kill, attempting to kill your sister. It's like, yeah, nah, he doesn't deserve your mercy. And I think John Henry Irons is, because of this has gotten so personal, you're dragging all my family into this. Nah, son, I'm not about to have that. So, and especially because like, yeah, my sister on this world, she has her own family, and then also on top of that, I've got my daughter. Like, no, I'm not about to have anyone taken away from me again. I'm like, we see him like repairing the suit. Who knows what upgrades he's going to include, but he's going to war. It's like, right, I'm going to talk to Sam. We're going to try and figure out a tactic to handle this. And once again, it puts Lois and Clark in this very complicated like situation. I think eventually, like, Lois is probably going to stop by the facility and probably talk to Pia about who she is and what she's done. So that's definitely going to be interesting. I skipped over it, but I thought it was an interesting parallel that Clark was trying to make about, like, right, you dig deep on Bruno, Pia, you might find some stuff. He was even suggesting, like, right, if people dig deep into us, they'd find out about my secret, which is like, which was Lois saying, like, right, and that's not a good thing. But Clark is like, yeah, but we are different than the Mannheims. Bruno has done a lot of terrible stuff. Yes, I have my secrets to keep for, like, the protection of my family, but I'm a good guy. Like, Bruno keeps secrets because he's a terrible person and he's trying to get away with terrible stuff, that he's a murderer, that he's the crime boss that he is. So that's going to be interesting to see where that all kind of ends up taking us. Some other storyline elements. We had the whole Sam trying to go on a date situation. That didn't work out, but I did love that him and Lana bonded because they're in a similar situation. It's like, granted, it's been a few more decades for Sam than it has been for Lana, but they're both in the similar situation of getting back out there seems so scary, which I get it. We all face that heartbreak when you're just like, man, I've definitely put my dating life on pause because of heartbreak. It just makes you not really ready to get out there. I've also been in Lana's situation where I've had an ex start dating before I did. That cuts deep, especially when you're trying to, I mean, obviously you're in a divorce situation, your family, like you have daughters, geez, so poor Sophie, you have daughters together. So yeah, it's different, but it's like, yeah, I've been in that situation where I stayed friends with an ex post us breaking up and said person moved on. That leaves you with all kinds of complicated feelings. So, but it's also like, I don't want to get hurt again. Like Kyle broke her heart, but it's like, yeah, it's, you know, that's never going to be any easier. It's never going to fully go away. But Sam's like, you don't want to be me, like with all those regrets, like all this time spent alone, putting your own life on pause in that regard. So, because she initially wanted to go to the concert with, it was supposed to originally be her and Kyle. This was probably like way in advance with concert tickets. But then, like, obviously the divorce and he's with Chrissy, so that'd be weird. But also, you tried to take Sarah, but Sarah's like, not, but she wasn't really paying attention to, like, oh, her mom just wanted an excuse to hang out because she's lonely, which is really sad. But then, like, she also tried to invite Clark, but Clark's like, I'm going to stay by Lois' side. And Chrissy's kind of like, nah, I can't do that. It's weird. I would love to, but I'm in this awkward situation because of the time frame of all the stuff we're working on, but also the awkward thing of I'm dating your ex-husband, so this is weird. So, yeah, there's that. I don't know if Clark even I don't know how many people know that outside of, like, Lana and Sarah. I don't know how much that's been talked about. I'm assuming, like, Clark pieced that together. Like, I guess it's just like, right, I mean, him and Lana are best friends, so it's probably a thing of that's probably come up in conversation. I mean, I'm sure Chrissy might have talked to Lois about that. Who knows? So there's that whole situation. But we do see later on she's hanging with Sarah and they're partying and enjoying themselves. So that's kind of nice because Sarah gave Jordan advice and Jordan gave Sarah advice. It's this interesting dynamic. This, obviously, they've always had their back and forth, and it's a sibling thing. We all know, like, if you have siblings, you know, like, siblings beef. I've seen that firsthand. I've kind of, because I keep to myself, I've never beefed really with my sisters, but my sisters beef with each other from time to time. It can get nasty, but at the very least, like, siblings want to bump heads, and we've seen that in their regards. Like, they bump heads a lot because it is that back and forth of, like, Jonathan tries to be supportive of his brother having powers, but it is always coming in conflict with what is my place in his family, because he's trying to find his own thing, because literally everyone else in the family has a thing. Once again, Clark and Jordan are the superpowered heroes. Lois is a renowned journalist. What's my thing? So Kyle presented this opportunity for him with the whole like firefighter stuff, especially because it's like, hey, like you're part of the junior firefighter program for him. It's like, it felt exciting. Does it help that Jordan kind of undermines it? He's like, oh, what are they doing? Blah, blah. Like, he doesn't realize how dickish that is, that he's like, his brother's trying to find something that's important to him and how much he cuts him down. But like, obviously Jonathan was meant to stick around, like stay behind and watch and not intervene, but Jordan comes in, saves the day, and saves a person, and Jonathan's on top of the guy checking him out, and then Kyle comes out and is like, wait, did you go in there and do that? Jonathan couldn't really explain too much. Kyle's pissed at him, and now he takes that out on Jordan because it's like, you're compromising the thing I'm into, and it's like, right, both of us can be heroes in this family, and he's like, the difference is you're up there doing, like, getting coffee for people. I'm the one with actual laser beams and stuff like that. He's like, yeah, I guess no, there's no room in the family for anyone else to be a hero besides you. Jordan felt like a dick, and it even took, Sarah being like, come on, this is important to your brother. Like, the fact is, you shouldn't throw it in his face about you having powers and him not. And he recognizes that. So he talks to Jonathan later and tries to apologize. It's like, I shouldn't have said that. But things are complicated. Like, he's still in a position where Kyle might fire him, but it is a thing of, Jordan hasn't handled this stuff in the best way. He ended up using his ice breath, and it led to... Now, this is the second time Kyle's been involved in a situation where he's noticed ice was used. So he's thinking like someone with powers is saving the day. Now, yes, he's got the disguise and everything, but it's still, you're leaving behind too much evidence. It's that complicated thing of, you should probably handle that a little bit better than you do. Like, maybe you don't need to fully freeze breathe it, but maybe, I don't know if like your regular like cool breath, like without having to freeze it, I don't know if you'd be able to put the fire out. But also, I think maybe Clark would even say like that's the part of the hero thing of you have to have judgment on when to intervene and when not to. And it's like, I mean, you should never have to, it should always be like, have these powers, let me use them responsibly to save someone. But it's also the thing of you're compromising your family's secret. I mean, granted, Kyle's the only one in the Cushing family who doesn't know. It's kind of weird to say that now, considering like Lana's not the Cushing anymore; they're divorced. But Kyle's the only one amongst them who doesn't. Well, him and Sophie don't know about the Kent family, so this might be him tiptoeing towards that. My immediate thought was, he's not going to recognize it's Jonathan. He's not going to piece it together that it's Jordan. He's actually going to piece it together that it's John. I think he's going to believe it's Jonathan first. And, and now, like, Jordan's kind of freaking out, like, okay, so what does your dad know? Like, Sarah texting her being like, yo, has your dad said anything tonight? Have you talked to him? Because Kyle is piecing this together. So we'll ultimately see where that goes. Eventually, you're probably going to have to tell Kyle the truth. But like I said, I think he's going to start, like, paying attention to Jonathan, wondering whether or not it's Jonathan. Because, like, hey, you saved that person, and there's cold breath, and we didn't really have this happen until you moved into town and stuff. It's like, I know someone else who has cool breath powers, but maybe he won't even really piece it together about the Superman connection. Maybe he'll piece that together. It's going to be interesting to see where that storyline elements, where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.